My name is Josh Nerpel. I'll be moderating the conversation today. I work with a company called ShareBlue. We're a digital media platform that amplifies the resistant progressive organizations and Democrats, particularly in the face of Trump. So we're working with a lot of the groups here to amplify content of the different activities and actions that they're taking to fight back since the election. But this particular conversation is focused on millennial engagement. So I think there's a lot to talk about as it relates to what millennials are interested in, what they're taking action in. I think there are some general ideas that millennials are potentially apathetic and they're not doing enough, and so we want to talk a little bit about what they are doing. I want to talk about since the election, I think we've seen a lot of sort of a surge of activism and what people are interested in now, and potentially how that translates to 2018 and 2020, how we continue to carry over some of that engagement. And I think the other thing we want to talk a bit about is, there were some conversations earlier about the Democratic Party, what the Democratic Party is standing for, and the tools they're providing. We want to talk a little bit about, as millennials, what they are looking for in the Democratic Party and in candidates, and particularly as we have elections coming up that can potentially have a big impact on the direction of our country, and what millennials think about that. So I think just to start off, just go down and everybody can introduce themselves, and talk a little bit about the organization that they work for and how they're involved in this particular space.
Hey everybody, thanks so much. Thanks Josh. So my name is Malia. I'm the founder of an organization called Defiant trying to find ways to engage young people, especially kind of newly engaged millennial voters, in conversations about problems that our society is facing and solutions that they can take to help address some of the problems facing their communities around them. So that's a form of online civic engagement. So we're creating kind of content to help people understand issues better, and then we're creating engagement campaigns to help people get plugged into the way those issues are impacting their local communities. So driving action on the ground, especially kind of distributed community organizing. So it's a really exciting space to be in. I think that we've seen a huge resurgence in interest in millennials being a part of politics, civic activism, work to make our democracy a better place for everybody, and there's a lot of work that we need to do.
Hi everyone, I'm Michaela Methune, head of campaigns at DoSomething.org. Do Something is the largest organization for young people and social change in the world. So we have over 5.7 million members between the ages of 13 to 25 who have taken a social change action with us. And so campaigns mean something different in different spaces. For us, 3 quick examples. 1, we had our members send Happy Ramadan cards to every single mosque in America this past summer. 2, in just 6 weeks, our members collected and donated over 500,000 period products to local homeless shelters. And 3, just recently, following the DACA announcement from the Trump administration, our members made over 10,000 phone calls to their representatives in just 24 hours to come out to support the Bipartisan DREAM Act. So we have very diverse actions and campaigns that we run for our members, all of them rooted in behavior change. So we really want young people to get habitually involved in civic engagement, be it political or volunteerism.
Mikva, I run a group here in Chicago called Goodwerk that we just started this past summer. We're piloting in Virginia. We only half-jokingly say, think Schoolhouse Rock meets Gawker meets Act Blue, but it's a platform to mix civics and new digital media with political giving around the issues that young people care about. Based here in Chicago, and we're really throwing a bunch of stuff against the Facebook newsfeed board to see what sticks, so that young people can find their ways to open their wallets to support candidates that share their values even when they're halfway across the country.
Hi, I'm Malous. I'm the founder of a new app called Act Today. It is a platform that helps people do research on their politicians, connect those to causes and bills that are upcoming. You can subscribe to things that you're interested in, and we'll give you updates, and we'll tell you actions you can take with scripts. The app is very focused on actions that go across calling your representative and making long-term legislative changes to way more local things like calling your local school and helping pay off like lunch debts for people. So it's trying to get people engaged very, very locally all the way to the very federal level.
Hi, I'm Lerner. I'm the co-founder of the Democratic Coalition. We're a resistance organization that aims to use use the energy against Trump to help Democrats win elections and also fight back on issues like the ACA repeal. We exist mainly in the digital space, though we've held grassroots events before. Because we exist so much online, we obviously do want to target millennials as much as possible, but despite our Facebook and Twitter presence, we're having a very difficult time with that. So it's something that we grapple with on a regular basis. And we've experimented with different things like engaging video content and apps and websites and have had mixed results. But it's something that's kind of always the forefront of our work and will continue to be.
So I think the first question that I want to put out there is that since the election, there has been I think a huge amount of energy and outpouring of people that are interested and excited about getting involved in politics or progressive issues in a way that they haven't been before. And I think that generally, I think that there is a perception of millennials that they are apathetic. And I think that since the election, we have seen something that is a counter to that. And I would just be interested in opening this up to the group of with the different groups that you're working for and the people that you're working with. Can you talk a little bit about the energy that you guys are seeing out there in the millennial space and what you guys are seeing? So maybe we'll start with Michaela and talk a little bit about what you think.
Definitely, yeah. One of our taglines is because apathy sucks, do something. So I feel that one of my favorite pastimes is if you go to google.com and you type in millennials are, some of the autofills are ruining the economy, are having less sex, are causing wars across the country, and then one of my favorites says are killing the napkin industry because they're using paper towels more. So I feel like we're really vilifying millennials in a lot of ways, and it happens generation over generation. It's a thing called juvenoia, where the former generation looks down upon the next generation coming into the workforce and has a fear of them, and so then they put them down a lot. So I understand that a lot of people say like millennials are apathetic, and every single day when I go to work in my office, that's primarily millennials working there, and we are activating millennials, millions of them every single day to do good in their communities. So much proof that they're not apathetic. And then to the point of since the election, definitely what we've been seeing has been this resistance babies, reawakened sense of activism that's come about. But I would even say before that, we were seeing trends of that in young people and millennials as a generation volunteering at higher rates than previous generations had beforehand. And young people reaching across the aisle at higher rates than previous generations before. So I do agree that there's energy now post-election, but I think that momentum was already occurring prior to that.
So I think, Malous, just a question for you, like Act Today. You're obviously the name of your organization is very action-driven. So what are you seeing in that?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is a lot of people have energy and they don't know what to necessarily do with it. There's a lot of different things that you can find, and it's difficult to know which ones have impact, which ones are more like slacktivism. And so giving people things that tie them back to their local communities is usually very helpful because it re-engages them in the cause, and then you can get them to do something that's more like call your representative about legislation. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of energy there, and it's just a matter of harnessing it correctly and finding the right things to give people and the right times to give it to them.
Malia, you have any takes on that?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that when we're looking across the spectrum at, kind of new resistance initiatives, a lot of those, unfortunately, are under-activating the millennial generation and young people in Gen Z demographic as well. And I think that largely just that's kind of network effects, right? So the people who were initially, jumping on and creating their own indivisible groups, getting activated in other ways, were largely older demographics. So the first millennials who showed up to those meetings didn't see any of their peers. And they didn't kind of feel like, oh, I can identify on a kind of cultural basis with the people who are also part of this movement or this organization. And then we saw them show up to one meeting and then they stayed home. And I think that a lot of them have been staying home from those types of gatherings for a long time since the election. So I think it's going to be really important for us to make sure that these folks who are absolutely not apathetic, definitely not apathetic, care deeply and are starting to understand what types of actions are going to really have impact in their communities and nationally, to make sure that we create peer groups for them to be a part of. Because we all want to be part of peer groups. I think the older generations want to be a part of peer groups just as much as younger generations. That's not unique to millennials. So there's a huge opportunity for us to maybe even create kind of millennial focused as parts of organizations that are already in existence, or to create new movement hubs that specifically target millennials and peer groups. But there's a lot of work to do. Still a lot of work to do.
And so I think there's also this concept out there that a lot of the activism that people are seeing is just online, and it's not necessarily translating into real action. And so, Jake, I'm wondering if you have seen any of that in the work that you're doing in Virginia, and translating it into actual action, or at least what would be ways to
Yeah, I would say that there are great groups doing great field work that always have, and there's new ones doing even better work that are specifically targeted to 35. One of the problems that we think we're talking about more often than not is young people live in 5 urban hubs, and they don't really feel like they have outlets for where they could go organize on the ground, or where they could, so giving them sort of a menu of options, build a new ecosystem that starts in digital. If you live in California, you're not going to fly out to Virginia and volunteer, but here's a way to give the volunteers on the ground GeoTV, walking around money. You can do your part that way, and then tying it together with the rest of the ecosystem. And if you do live in Virginia, here are the groups that you should be talking to. So sort of this new millennial-focused ecosystem, but building all these new tools that talk to each other, that peers can share with each other, to sort of weave that new web of here's how you do money for millennials, here's how you do organizing for millennials. So even if you don't live in Virginia, you live in San Francisco, LA, Chicago, or New York, this is the way to have electoral impact and steer them away from the slacktivism, collectivism of liking, sharing, signing petitions.
And I open this up to the panel as a whole. I mean, I personally am someone who's involved in politics, and I am often looking for actions and ways to get involved. And how much of it do you guys see is, particularly for millennials, is it that there's apathy towards actually going out and taking action versus the slacktivism type of thing, or is it the ability to actually find the activities that are out there or the actions that people can take? Is it a lack of platforms that exist to connect people to the action? I think that particularly for Act Today and what you're doing there, that's obviously the objective and trying to fill that void. How much of it is what millennials are interested in, or the technology to not connect people appropriately to the types of actions they're interested in?
So one thing that I think is true is that millennials probably are active in a different, it's a shifting way from older generations. So very cause focused, going out for things that they specifically care about or they can get riled up for. Sorry, I can't remember the other part of your question.
Well, so I guess the question is it a millennial issue of online activism versus doing things in person, or is it a lack of activities and actions that are out there? Is it the ability to find them, or is it just a misperception as a whole?
I think that finding activities that you can do, what you can go out and do, is very difficult. One thing that, because I'm from I live in the Bay Area, I'm from LA, I've lived in Chicago, I've lived in many of those places. And so it does feel very difficult to make an impact somewhere that matters, or that's more of a swing state or swing district. And I think that there are tools that are doing a pretty good job at that, whether it's connecting people in very blue areas to people who are running, and you can give them money, or you can make calls or campaign on their behalf. I think Flippable does that, that's pretty good. But yeah, finding actions that you can take that don't just feel like they fall into this void, I think is really important, and it's difficult to find those. One thing that we're doing is you log in Act Today with your Facebook account, and so we have access to your Facebook friends who are also on the platform, and so we can tag people you can tag people who are in other districts about causes that you care about. So again, I'm in California, none of my representatives were part of the ACA repeal, but I did have friends in Wisconsin, and I did have friends in other states that could call their representatives. So I can basically reach out to them and say, hey, this is really important, you should call. I really care about it, and I think you would too, which is kind of this more personal one-on-one feel where you can actually reach out to them better.
Yeah. I think it's, to answer the question, no, it's that we're not asking young people to be a part of it. And so there's a lot of huge problems, and what Malia was speaking to is young people aren't being invited to the table, especially on issues that disproportionately affect them. They're being talked about, politicians are talking about what should be best for dreamers, and they're not listening to dreamers, right? And so that's what we've really seen, is if you ask young people what they think, and you invite them to the rooms that you're having these conversations, you don't tokenize them, you don't just invite them to see hey, look, we care about young people, you actually take their thoughts and authentically and integrate it into your own strategy, your own outreach, your own mission, that's the only way to really get it to be authentic. And then I would say breaking down issues to make it clear what the impact's going to be. So we have over 320 calls to actions that have been vetted by cause experts that we have on site. And the thing is, like, they have great bullshit detectors, right? Like millennials and especially Gen Z, they know changing their Facebook photo to a filter doesn't do shit. And so they know that, and they want to find real ways to take an action, and it's going to be more meaningful and fulfilling. And once you get to that aha moment of seeing your impact, and you see, I did this one thing, it resulted in this output, then you're more likely to come back and re-engage. So I think it's asking people and directly showing them what their impact is, and not saying, great, we just used you to be a number to achieve a goal. It's investing in people first, and then the outcome second.
I mean, I would say the big issue right now is not so much the tools that don't exist, it's that millennials aren't being inspired to use them. There's a campaign in every district, locally and nationally. As we've seen today, there's so many amazing organizations out there, and I have to wonder how many millennials are involved in them. In our organization, we're definitely not seeing enough of it in our small dollar donors and our activists. Even the campaigns I've been a part of, the millennials that we get are interns. But that's because we've incentivized them, we've inspired them to come join the campaign. And when you look at the candidates who have inspired millennials, it's because they come at them with authenticity, they inspire them, they're bringing a message of hope. And if you look at those who got involved in the Bernie campaign, who got involved with Cory Booker, with Obama, with Hillary, it's because they really believed in what they were about. And I think we need more politicians who are resonating with them, and more organizations that are providing a message that are really encouraging millennials to get involved. And I think, so it's a combination of a lack of tools, but I think there are enough, but really at the end of the day, it's pushing them to make a difference. And part of the problem is, yeah, we're not bringing them to the table, but it's a little bit of it is on them because they're not voting as much. And that's just what young people do. But I think millennials are more active and care more than previous generations did at their age. So there is that energy there. We just need to tap into it and harness it, but we're not quite there yet.
So what do you, I think, to follow up on that point, what can organizations, I want to talk about political candidates and that movement stuff, really about what can organizations do to appeal more to millennials and to get them to turn out and take action?
I think that just creating young, fun, culturally resonant media that exists on platforms where they already are, and then using that as an entry point to get them to engage on your organization's platform or on your set of issues. And I think that a really important point for millennials that a few folks here touched on is that millennials really care about the issues. They want to learn more about the issues, and I think that is our best, as the political system, that is our best entry point to get them to engage and really take action, is to say, these are the problems that our society is facing, instead of just saying vote, 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 because something that we also have to reckon with is this idea that maybe the fact that millennials and other kind of low engagement demographics in our society, maybe the reason they don't vote is because they don't see the impact of voting on their lives. They don't see the impact that politicians are having to make their lives better and to make their communities better. And that's actually, that's maybe a rational decision that they're making, as irrational as it may feel to us, who are deeply involved in the work every day. So I think when you say the issues that you see in your community around you, the problem points, the pain points, are going to be, the way we're going to bring you in, and then we're going to show you how you can have an impact on those issues. And then suddenly, when you throw out a slate of candidates and you say, this slate of candidates, this candidate represents, these issues. This candidate is going to fight for universal health care the way, Bernie Sanders, really motivated by young people by saying he's going to do that. We've got a really kind of strong hook to get them to vote, to take actions to call their representatives, because they'll understand how the system works better.
And what issues, and I open this up to the whole group, what issues do you think are mobilizing or energizing millennials at this point?
Criminal justice reform. I think the Millennial Impact report just showed there was a really interesting shift that happened after the election, that people became more focused on civil rights, criminal justice, and that actually became the top issue for the millennial demographic, which it hadn't been previously. healthcare became a really top issue for everybody, and I think when we talk about access to healthcare, especially something like childcare, this is an issue that disproportionately impacts millennial women now more than anyone else, and education has obviously been an issue for a long time, but there are a lot of other priorities that the generation has.
And I'll say 3 things, which isn't cause specific. We're a cause agnostic organization, but the lessons that we've learned from activating millennials, and we've worked with young people for 24 years on this. The 3 things would be fairness, local, and community. So you can take any issue, any cause, and if you apply those frames to it, you can get millennials to care. So if you do the fairness framework, that's really effective to show like the system set up against you, like young people are being marginalized for this, your voice is being suppressed. If you frame it as fairness, regardless of the issue, we've seen that work. If you do it local, backyard issues, really, let's not focus on the federal for elections and just getting out the vote there, but showing how you can have an effect on your local backyard issues in your school is really effective. In the community, so we see on campaigns, they might have the similar number of engagement in terms of signups that we're getting on one issue, but if they have a friend who's involved, they're 6 times more likely to stay engaged and follow through on that campaign. So it really is, it's like the exercise model. If you have a friend hold you accountable to like go to that gym class, you're more likely to end up doing it. We're building a muscle, and it really is political participation, making it habitual. You can use a lot of the similar comps to exercise. You're adopting a new lifestyle, a new behavior, and it's healthier for democracy, not just your body.
So Jake, you're on the ground in Virginia right now, you're working on races there, is that right?
We are doing national digital strategy
Okay.
with the hope of having local impact. So
And as far as, like what the issues that you see resonating at the local impact, what do you see as resonating with folks online?
yeah, I would say it's the millennial version of the same issues that affect everyone else. And so millennial moms, I have my team writing about this, and we're like, pre-K education is a huge issue, yet we're not including millennials in that conversation. So the article that we're writing is like 60% of millennial moms made an Instagram account for their child, and 7.5 million moms don't have a place to send that child during the day when they go out and work, and we're the generation that everyone learns, moms have. So we think a lot about just taking the same issues and changing it into language that affects us. So 4 million young people are on Medicaid, only in states that expanded Medicaid. So the national issue is healthcare, the local issue is Virginia needs to expand Medicaid. We send that to California and say, it has had X benefit in California, you and your peers are on Medicaid, let's help our cohort, our millennial cohort, access those same affordable healthcare options in Virginia. And that's the version of it that plays, we think best, and allows, we think a lot about closing the empathy gap online. That's the version that we run with.
And from what you guys are seeing, and maybe you can weigh in on this, like how much of the energy that you guys are seeing, particularly since the election, is a mindset of trying to resist Trump, resist the Republicans, resist the administration, versus caring about particular issues and getting involved because of they want to try to move that issue forward? Like, what is the balance between those two things, and particularly, like, what do you see from your organization?
Yeah, so there's a big issue right now that drives me crazy is, people love to freak out about Russia, they love to freak out about like all the civil rights issues we're seeing, and they are very justified in that. But the problem is you get so focused on those issues, you lose sight of the bigger picture, and that's what we need to win in 2018. Like, it's really, really simple. We just take back the House, it'll solve so many problems, and that's not like a sexy answer. That's not as cool as getting involved and, getting involved in the Russia scandal and, going out and protesting. At the end of the day, like, we need to just really get back to basics and win elections, and that's a really hard message to sell millennials on, because that requires a lot of work, and it takes a while, and it's a lot of long-term investment. But that's really where we have to get them to, arrive at, and that will take time to convince them. But the way we win them over is by saying, look, if you care about this issue, the solution is winning this election. Let's get you involved and get you signed up. It's not easy, but that's really what needs to be done, in my opinion.
And so, I think a lot of us are here at this conference today because of a want to ensure that we don't see what happened in the 2016 election happen again. We want to be able to build new tools or energize people or get them involved in a way that, particularly in 2018 and 2020, that we're able to, I think, turn the tide of what we're seeing today with our political leadership. And I'm wondering if you guys could just weigh in, and I open this up to everyone, of how do we translate, I think, a lot of the energy that we're seeing both online and in person right now into, I think, some elections in 2017 and then, importantly in 2018, and then eventually in 2020. How do we keep people engaged over a period of a year, 2 years, 4 years, build ladders of engagement that are keeping people engaged in that way? How do we translate all of this into electoral results?
Yeah, am I the only one that thinks being in the hashtag resistance is exhausting? Like, every Trump month feels like a year, and so we calculate these like dog years, and I think that's a really hard organizing principle, like to do that for 4 years. We're not going to march for science for the rest of our adult lives. So finding the slow burn activism that works, that we start to organize around what we're for and not just what we're against, is going to be key. And I think that's the language of fairness and civic duty rather than resist. And that's just the language we use. If we have sort of in our editorial code, if we sound alarmist, it's because we're actually alarmed. But we're not going to try to write that clickbait for 4 years because I think people will be left out to lunch. When you start talking about candidates, then people won't have given much thought to the things that they're for, just the things that they're against. And so we talk about that a lot. Every time we write an article that doesn't mention Trump, we're happy.
That's a big problem. Is that there's so much burnout with the hyperbole that we're seeing, and it's what's funny is we're really Democrats are sounding the alarm about Trump right now, but it's hard to get that message to resonate because we've been sounding the alarm for 20 years, just like Republicans have at their pace, and it's hard to keep that energy going every day. But at the same time, and you guys mentioned this, it's very accurate, is showing tangible results and showing them that their actions can create change and solve these problems. And that was a big part of Bernie Sanders' message was don't believe people who tell you that you can't create a difference because we can come into government and change everything. Unfortunately, that was also Trump's message as well, and that resonated with his base also. But we need to show them results. We need to show they can make a difference. And not rely too much on hyperbole, but also tailor our message in a way that does reach them because this is a generation that grew up on advertising and is really immune to a lot of it. So we have to get very creative and not be afraid to take risks and not pander to them. We can't, bring Little John and Lena Dunham in and say, vote. That's insulting to them. It's getting them inspired about these issues that just like we would with a normal voter, just in a slightly cooler manner.
So I think
Yeah, and just thinking about all of this is sustainable civic engagement. How do you make that habitual? If you just vote every 2 years, that can't be habit forming, right? Necessarily. Like, yes, once you vote 3 times, you're more likely to be a lifelong voter. But that's how we got to where we are, is just focusing on the output of tallying and getting out to vote, as opposed to what's the value proposition to stay engaged in your community, in your school board, in your city council, not during an election cycle. And so I think that's something important to think about is what else are you getting? Are you getting the sense of community from your local chapters that you're a part of or local organizing groups? And to think beyond just let's go up until November 6, 2018. Like we're planning to do a big push the day after that to show your voice mattered yesterday, but it also matters today. And as a citizen of this country, you have to give back every day. And it can't just be when we're trying to use you for these elections.
how do you see millennials responding to that?
One thing, so when you celebrate getting involved in the political process as a rite of passage, for example, we were in a campaign called Lose Your V Card last year, which was all about losing your voting card. But it was about really FOMO, fear of missing out, and leaning into the idea that if you just say things like, millennials don't vote, the youth vote is being depressed, etc., that just demobilizes young people, and then it's social norms that it's just like basic sociology, where you're like, nobody else is voting who's my age, why would I vote? But if you frame it more of this FOMO, like this is a celebration, it's a rite of passage, it plays out really strongly, and you want to like learn how other people lost their V card or whatnot. But it really afterwards, people were saying, you made it more fun. You didn't make it seem like I'm your teacher telling you you must do this homework. You showed how it related to issues I care about, right? Back to that, and how to continue that post the election as well. So I do think it's a lot of framing and messaging, and again, not just using this generation saying this is you must do this, but just kind of showing why it can be fun and why it can be empowering.
Yeah. And beyond the issues, actually, I think that we have an incredible opportunity right now to talk to young people and say, you know, this is our moment. If we decide right now the kind of future that we want to build over the next 20 years and the kind of change that we want to see in our society, and if we decide amongst ourselves what are the concrete steps that we need to take in order to build that world that we want to live in, then I think we're going to be able to really motivate people to take action in all different kinds of ways. It's kind of what I think about as the future message, and what do we think about? Can we think about this generation of millennials, Gen Z as future voters that are going to be, that see the next 20 years as something that they have a deep personal stake in, and that other generations actually may not feel as much responsibility over because they may not be there and they may not have to live through those consequences of the actions that we're taking today. So I think that that's kind of another powerful motivating frame that totally gets beyond the concept of resistance. Now we're not even talking about the Trump administration. We're talking many years beyond that. That's powerful.
The 20-year thing is really interesting because I think that, to your point, it's hard to get people to stay engaged or it's hard to get people to stay organized and engaged through long things that are difficult. But breaking down our 20-year plan into what can we do tomorrow, what can we do next month, what can we do this year, and then really closing the loop on what your actions accomplished. So sometimes you take small actions. I think that coming back and showing people the result of what happened there. So if you make a call about a bill, coming back and saying good job, that bill, the bill did, or whatever thing you called about happened or didn't happen, that was a really good thing that you did, stay engaged. Closing that loop and showing people that what they did actually mattered and had an impact is really big. And I think that, again, to your point, this generation growing up with social media, growing up with a lot of advertisement, there's a lot of gamification that people have used very successfully in getting things to go viral. I think that tapping into some of that, tapping into that mindset is a really powerful tool that we can definitely use more of.
So I'm just going to do one more question, and then I think we'll open it up to a question from the audience. We're in some of the panels earlier today talking about the party and what the DNC is doing to, from a technological point of view, to sort of respond to current needs. I'm curious from you guys, what do you guys think that millennials want to see from the party? What do they want to see from their candidates? What gets them energized? And just open that up to the group as a whole.
I think authenticity is huge. It's something we don't see in politicians ever, and it drives everyone insane. I mean, again, that's why Trump was so successful. He was overly authentic, and it's especially millennials because they've just been overwhelmed with ads and fake things their entire lives that they can spot BS from a mile away, and politicians are masters of BS, but they can't fool millennials. So we need better politicians who are running. And I think what is really promising though is we're seeing a whole new generation of politicians coming up, not just young people, but more grassroots politicians who are raising money from small dollar donors, or being supported by organizations like the ones we see here today. I think for the DNC to reach them, they need to embrace those candidates. They need to get away from a lot of what they've done in the past, because right now polling shows that millennials don't like the Democratic Party. And so a message coming from where the DNC currently is not going to resonate. They need to find new ways to reach them, and maybe that's through different avenues and different messengers. But yeah, they need to mix it up, basically. That's not a good answer, but something needs to change.
And then what about the candidates? You're talking, I think, a little more about the party, but what do you guys think? And as millennials, what types of candidates energize you? What excites you about any of the people you currently see out there or hoping for?
I think I guess this is party and candidates, so answering both questions. Just looking at our membership, which again, it's 13 to 25-year-olds, so it is Gen Z. Mostly Gen Z is born after 99, so if you think about it, everyone who's able to vote next year was born in 2000, so we'll let that blow your mind. But and so just thinking about them and our membership, 47% of them identify as moderate, and 42% is unaffiliated from any party. And that maps to 13 to 25-year-olds across the country, 30% are unaffiliated. So it's just a big reckoning that I think we need to come to, not just small tweaks to the Democratic Party, but really huge radical change. I don't think we can get by with incremental change anymore. So I just think there's a lot bigger discussion to have there.
Yeah, and then how do candidates run knowing that the party, their affiliation with one party or another, is really not going to help them that much, right? Whether it's Democrats or Republicans. And then I think you totally get to the authenticity place, and I think that millennials in particular, right, that we're posting status updates on Instagram, Facebook all the time. kind of want that from our candidates too, and that give them like a window into their lives, and it's like, hey, I'm out here today, I'm walking the streets, I'm talking to voters in the subway, I'm talking to voters, you know, like in small businesses in my community, and that actually also plays like a civic education role, I think, in the ecosystem of politics, because it's that window into what does it look like to be a candidate, what does it look like to run for office, what do campaigns look like, how do they work, so I think the more we see that, and then maybe you just have a local audience, you know, maybe you're not reaching a national audience with your like small mayoral campaign, but you're going to reach a bunch of people, you know, in your city and in your community. Young people on social media platforms be really helpful to your campaign.
Why don't we just do one question from the audience?
Hey, what's up, guys? So something that really concerned me during the 2016 election is seeing a lot of my peers, specifically my male peers in particular, when Hillary became the primary candidate, they were mad, you know, Bernie didn't win the primaries, and then they were suddenly like, we're going to vote for Trump. And that really concerned me, and you know, it definitely, because I think the authenticity went into, they felt Hillary wasn't authentic, but also like, it felt like, you know, internalized misogyny kind of play a role too, because I don't know, and because every time I tried to like persuade them, like they would not take me seriously, and also they were like, no, but he has like more values, I don't know, it was some stupid argument, but like, I wish I had like something good I could have said to them in response, just like, so this doesn't happen in the future. Do you have any like good responses or like good comebacks? Not comebacks, but do you know what I mean? Like, because it was really like throwing me for a loop, and it's an awful situation to be in. So.
Well, as a recovering Bernie bro, I will. The worst thing you can do is call them misogynist, because that just ends the conversation right there, because you're attacking them. And I was coming from a place of don't be an idiot, like vote for Hillary, like what are you doing? But that shuts it down. Our organization actually, probably the most successful video we released was one that went after Bernie Sanders supporters who were voting for Gary Johnson, who was a libertarian candidate. And when you think about it, that makes absolutely no sense if you're supporting a socialist libertarian. And we did it. Right, and we, you know, I was tempted again just to be like, don't be an idiot, but that was not the message for our video. It was actually very policy heavy, and it really just came from a place of sitting them down and logically approaching, you know, why you should vote for Gary Johnson. This is what he actually stands for. This is what Bernie stands for. You know, and then showing a clear chart of all the things that Hillary and Bernie aligned on and where Gary Johnson did not fall. And that's not an easy conversation because you have to really discuss policy points and sit them down, and they have to be willing to listen. But at the very least, you're going to have more luck than just saying, you know, don't be stupid, because it's, again, you're just, as soon as you attack someone, it turns them off. And we've had that issue with Trump supporters where it's so frustrating the way they behave and the views that they have, and you just want to insult them, but that's really counterproductive. We can't do that.
By the way, I was like really agreeing to misogyny. I love
No,
that.
you're fine, yeah.
Make that clear.
So we only have time, I think, just for one.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I was good. My one last thing about just candidates overall for millennials, and I think this is true just for what democracy needs, but we just need more young people, more women, and more people of color in office, because our country right now, who has the power, doesn't have, is not representative. So I would just implore all of you, if any of those are your identities, to consider running for office or help your friends run for office as well, because we need more people like you in office.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I think we could probably go on for hours on this particular topic. You know, I think that I am energized by the people that I see up on this panel, and I think the people that are here at this conference today. I think that, you know, as depressing or tired as the kind of situation we find ourselves in today, and the sort of barrage of stuff we see out of Trump, I think that what keeps me going every day is the energy, particularly that we're seeing from millennials, and the want to fight back, and the want to build things that are positive for the future. So I thank you, all of you guys, for your work and taking